Добрый день.
Hello. We are about to finish our working day. It was truly intense. We talked about unmanned and automated transportation vehicles, and now we are going to talk about the issues related to the development of cities. We are talking about superstar cities. My name is Alexander Polakov. I'm Vice President of the International Union of Public Transportation and Chair at the Eurasian Section of UIPT. The question is about the following. We are in 2021, and 2020, 2021 were truly hard. But many cities are going out of lockdown. Many cities are starting to live in different rhythm. We see that life is being reorganized. And that way out of lockdown is what people spent outside of the cities. Many people decided to move out of the city. People started to rent private houses. And now, thanks to the fact that we have good connection with the Moscow district, people continue to live in private houses and work in the large city. What is the way in the future? What kind of development are large cities going to have? Is it about concentration, or is it about the creation of a network of smaller towns around the larger city to have the so-called sinurbia, when people live in one city, work in another city, go to the fairs to the third city and get the benefits of everything? Because if you take all these towns and cities together and they are connected with public transportation, then you can enjoy the benefits of a large city, taking a little bit from each small town. I would like to introduce my participants. Mohamed Mezgani, General Secretary of UIPT in Brussels, Belgium. Then Gulshan Rzaeva from Baku Transportation Agency, Azerbaijan. Yulia Temnikova is in the studio with me, Deputy Head of Moscow Subway and Deputy Director General of Moscow Trust, Chair of the Executive Committee, Eurasian Section of the UIPT, and Jan Jennings, Chief Specialist of the Department of Urban Transportation and Ecology, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development from London, UK. So I would like to give you just a couple of minutes for short introduction, and then we will move on to the discussion of the problems. Right now, I'd like to give you a couple of minutes for the introduction, and I hand over to Mohamed Mezgani. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Before I give my introduction, I would like just to make a request. We don't see at all the room where you are. We only see a black screen. So if the technicians can solve this issue, please. We would like to see the participants in the studio as well. Thank you very much. So while waiting to see the participants, I would like first to thank you for having me and for having involved me in this session. I'm very happy to be here with you all. I'm the Secretary General of the International Association of Public Transport, which was established in 1885 in Brussels, in Belgium. And I would like to start by saying a word about UITP. So UITP gathers all public transport stakeholders, the operators, the companies operating public transport, the authorities, the public authorities, the supplying industry, the consultants, academics, and so on. We cover all modes of transport, those which are rail-based, like metro, LR, light rail, tramway, suburban rail, also the road-based modes, like buses, trolley buses, taxis, ride-hailing, bike sharing, scooter sharing, and the waterborne transport. And in the future, maybe the air city transport as well. We have 1,800 members in 100 countries. We pursue 3 missions, which are to first to advocate for public transport and sustainable mobility, to be a center of knowledge and training about public transport, and to be a network for public transport professionals. So UITP operates from Brussels and 15 locations worldwide, and with an office in Moscow for the Eurasia region, and this is what is gathering all of us together. So talking about the crisis, I would say that we have been experiencing for the last 16 months important consequences on mobility in general and public transport in particular. First, the pandemic has shown that public transport is an essential service. You remember during the lockdowns, while most activities in the city have been suspended, public transport continued to be operated to serve those who have no other mobility choices and the healthcare personnel. And we all have seen how essential to the city public transport is. And the frontline staff has shown their dedication, and public transport agency their sense of responsibility and commitment. And second, also public transport appeared to be a vulnerable service. It was not prepared to address a sanitary crisis like this one. It had to embrace new approaches like disinfection, physical distancing, so to be able to operate. And we have learned how important it is to improve the resilience of public transport. And third, this crisis has shown that public transport is an undervalued service. Though there is a consensus about the essential role of public transport, the sector didn't receive the needed financial and institutional support. And many governments have taken for granted that public transport can sustain itself while expressing support and dedicating funds to other industries like the airline industry or the automotive industry. It's like they don't see the benefit and the value of public transport. But I must say, this is not the case in Moscow, where projects have been accelerated during the pandemic and the support was given to public transport. And the last point I would like to share with you in this introduction is that public transport has been unfairly accused of being a risky place for the transmission of the virus. And now we have many scientific studies, empirical surveys that show that public transport is COVID safe when basic conditions are satisfied. And we have compiled most of those studies in UITP and summarized them on a paper that you can find on our UITP website. So I'll stop here for now, and we can develop this further later in the session. And I do hope that we can solve the issue of the stream because we don't see the room where you are and the other speakers. Thank you very much.
Muhammad, есть предложение у нас.
Mr. Mezgani, we have the website moscowurbanforum.ru. If you go to the website of the Moscow Urban Forum, you can see the live stream of our discussion there, and we will be able to send you a link. And thank you very much for your introduction.
I am sorry, but I participated yesterday in a session, and we could have seen the room. We could see the room and the speakers, so I expect the same today. Thank you.
All right, we will try to do it. Okay. Thank you very much, and I would like to give the mic to Gulshan Razayeva from Baku, from the Transportation Agency, Baku, Azerbaijan. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to greet you on behalf of Baku Transportation Agency, and thank you for inviting us to this session. Unfortunately, we cannot be present there personally because of the situation, and we will be happy to share our challenges and plans for the future. But Baku Transportation Agency closely cooperates with UITP. We became the member of it in 2018, and we especially closely cooperate with Eurasian Committee of this international organization. Mr. Mezgani already spoke about the importance and role of public transportation and challenges that it faced. How important it was to preserve the jobs in the sector. The world undergoes pandemics for the last 18 months, and public transportation is the area which is really affected. This COVID-19 related crisis led to restrictions to improve the health of people. So our routes of public transportation were changed, and our agency had a task to ensure safety and proper operation of public transportation in our country. So we made a map of actions in case of emergency to support proper operation to ensure safety of passengers and workers. That was our top priority. As a regulator of public transportation, we ensured the support of public transportation during the crisis in Baku to offer mobility services to representatives of society, especially those working in very important and sensitive sectors. During discussion, I will be happy to speak about challenges we faced, measures taken, and our plans for the future to support and to ensure efficiency of this very important public sector. The agency taken by the Transportation Agency to mitigate the consequences of COVID-19 pandemics for the city transportation demonstrated commitment to safety of passengers and allowed the city to continue functioning within the framework of restrictions. Mr. Mezgani spoke about the importance of funding and investment from the state. In our case, despite all the negative impact of the crisis on the public transportation, the state continued to invest in the renewal of buses. At the end of 2020, a contract was signed on the purchase on new 238 buses. And that is again the proof of the commitment of the government to support the sector, and it's a good testimony to the fact that measures taken by our agency were important. It demonstrates how important the development of urban mobility is. Urban mobility is very important, and urban mobility development is our top priority. Thank you very much. I would like to stop here. During our discussion, I will be ready to tell you more about the situation. Well, we are always interested in specific figures, and now I would like to hand over to Yulia, my colleague, Deputy Head of Moscow Subway, the Deputy Director General of Moscow Trans and Chair of the Executive Committee of the Eurasian Section of UITP. Hello, dear colleagues, and thank you for inviting me. I would like to greet everyone here in the hall and watching us online. I'm happy to see familiar faces. We really work a lot to exchange experience and information in the conditions of pandemics. And of course, we always say that we systematically work with the colleagues within the framework of the Eurasian section. We exchange the information about passenger services that will be implemented in a big variety of countries. Well, speaking about Moscow, there is no doubt that we faced the hardships of pandemics, and Moscow Subway, despite all the hardships, continued to develop. 7 new stations were opened in 2021, and measures taken by us were recognized as one of the most efficient among all the subways of the world. So that is the measure that was recognized and appraised highly by the International Union of Public Transportation. Moscow Subway continued to develop. At the same time, it, of course, focused on disinfection. Safety of passengers was our top priority. So our top priority was not only to provide services, but also to ensure safety of passengers. We increased the disinfection frequency, and we started to disinfect tunnels for subway as the first company of the world. We continue to develop passenger services. For example, we increased the geography of services. for mobility improvement. We have a special center of mobility improvement that provides services for people with limited abilities, people in the wheelchairs. So we work not only underground in the subway, but also we try to expand the service to the public transportation operating on the roads. We also develop remote ways of payment that is very popular. Now we use no contact payment not only in public transportation but in all social spheres. That is convenient. So with the help of smartphone or bank card, you can pay for the public transportation ride. In addition to that, in 2020, we renewed our mobile application. We started a chatbot, and the name is Alexandra. If you go to the booth of Moscow Transportation, you can see an interesting version of the chatbot. It is a video of Alexandra, a beautiful lady who helps our passengers to travel around, and she is able to answer any question. And we are going to scale up this chatbot. In addition to that, we continue to share our experience, as I have already mentioned. We exchange our experience at the platforms of International Union of Public Transportation. Right, and now we are flying to London. I give the mic to Jan Jennings, Chief Specialist of the Department of Urban Transportation and Environment, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Да, все слышно.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, very nice to be here. And thanks to UITP for the invitation to join this panel and support this discussion on public transport. So my name is Ian Jennings. I'm the Urban Transport Specialist based in London. And I support all the EBRD funded projects in urban transport across the Eurasia region and all of the EBRD economies. This year, we celebrated 30 years since our establishment in 1991. And since that time, we've been a major multilateral bank in the Eurasia region through this period, accompanying and supporting transition to market economies and now towards sustainable economies. So I would like to mention a few of our key priorities for lending support. Firstly, the Board of Governors of the EBRD have just announced today, actually, at our annual general meeting, that all of our investments will be fully Paris-aligned with the Paris Agreement by the end of 2022. We know this is a big step for everyone, and we are working with others, with our lending partners and our clients in aligning our priorities towards this strategic goal. We already last year announced our strategic priorities as green, which is very much in line with Paris alignment, inclusive, and digital. So we're already at EBRD, we've already done a lot in terms of green investment. We have a target of 50% to be green by 2025. And actually, in infrastructure, we were already at 71% before COVID happened. And we know that our public transport projects and urban transport projects are very much part of this effort. So I'll leave it there for now. Very nice to be with you, and look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Спасибо большое, Ян.
Thank you, Ian.
так скажем, хотелось бы услышать разные точки.
We would like to hear different opinions. We have a centralized development route. In Asia in particular, we can see it when they have huge megacities or gigantic cities with population of up to 100 million people growing upwards. And there's a totally different way of development when from a small town you can reach another country when you have a very well-developed country. For example, in Europe, you live in a small town somewhere in Belgium, and you can commute to France or some other country nearby. Again, thanks to the high level of development of public transport. No other infrastructure, no other country has similar infrastructures, but we do have railways. We have areas which are reached within 1 hour, an hour and a half, and when those little towns are merge into a one city, sinurbia, it's called. In Belarus, for example, Mogilev Bobruisk Gomel. So the towns with 300,000 population, 212,000 in Bobruisk. So altogether, 3 towns together, 1.3 million. If we expand geography a bit, that would be 2 million. Or Kazakhstan, Taraz Shymkent Turkestan, 1.7 million. In those 3 towns, sometimes people forget about smaller towns. In Russia, we have similar cases. I would like to ask you, how, in your view, will the cities develop? Are we to see super concentration around major cities like Moscow, Baku, and others? Or do you think, driven by the development of the public transport, we will be seeing new settlements springing up across Eurasia? Mohammed, what are the shared common features of exiting the COVID? How did COVID affect the public transport operations? So that's the question I would like to ask you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you. Now we can see you, and we can see Yulia as well. And thank you for the organizers to have solved this technical issue. So regarding the, you started developing a very interesting approach about cities. And I think this coronavirus crisis is also a crisis of cities, or it has made clear that we have to think our cities differently. We all remember during the lockdown, and we all realized how much space is dedicated to traffic and how much space is dedicated to cars. And I would say how much space is wasted by cars. And so it is therefore critical to rethink how space is shared and give priorities to those modes which are the most efficient. There are a number of surveys organized by an organization called YouGov in Europe, and it shows clearly that people, about 80% of the people surveyed, they consider that we should dedicate more space to walking, to cycling, to public transport. In other way, we should have more space for people and less for cars. And in this regard, I think we should seize the momentum now to maybe consider congestion charging as a way to control car traffic and its nuisances, for example. Because unfortunately, these nuisances, they haven't disappeared with the coronavirus. So we still have issues of pollution, of climate change, of road accidents, of congestion, of course. And so we have to make sure to find solutions to reduce this congestion. And congestion charging could be one way. It could be also a way to fund alternative mobility options, because part of the revenues collected from this congestion charging could go and fund public transport and walking and cycling. What is for sure is that cities for people means less cars. And if we replace the existing cars by zero-emission cars, it will not solve the problem, because the green traffic jam is still a traffic jam, unfortunately. So it's not just about electrifying. Of course, if you approach the issue from a pollution or from issue only, electrification could be an option. But we cannot just solve the issue of electrification and then leave the congestion issue not unsolved. So it's important that we tackle all these problems together, and we must give back cities to people after, I would say, this interlude of 100 years dominated by cars. And the challenge to reduce individual car use offers the opportunity to accelerate the development of shared and on-demand mobility solutions, of flexible mobility solutions. And this crisis has also encouraged the use of shared scooters, bikes, ride-hailing, taxis, etc. So we have a diversity of transport options available, and they have changed the paradigm by moving the focus from supply to demand, from transport infrastructure to service. And I would say from ready-made to tailor-made mobility services. So this is making the urban transport more complex, more difficult to apprehend. But there is something important, is that mass public transport is and will remain the backbone in our cities, because it's the only way that can carry large volume of people in a reduced space. And this will be complemented by on-demand and shared mobility solutions. So if we do that, it will make public transport door to door and not anymore station to station only. So we will make it easy for the people to plan their trip, to use the right mode at the right place or at the right moment of the day, according to the purpose of the trip, and in such a way that we don't need to own a car, because there will be always a solution offered to move from door to door. And this is the only way to reduce traffic congestion. So to come back to your question, yes, we have to design cities for people. That's one of the main lessons we have learned from this crisis, and to give the space to people and not to vehicles. So yeah, I will stop here for the moment. Thank you.
An interesting perspective, thank you. To follow up on the trends outlined by Mohammed, did we manage to bring people back to the public transport? Gurshan, the question for you, did you manage to flatten the peak loads in the city of Baku? Do you still have a rush hour in the morning, in the evening? Have you flattened this curve, or is it you still have spikes and in congestion early in the morning and late at night? Thank you, Alexander. Yes, the urban transport was hit hard, like in any other cities. I'll tell you briefly how our public transit system was affected by the COVID pandemic, and then speak about the measures we took to alleviate the consequences and our future plans. Plans to turn Baku a city for people. We did have some problems. It changed the mobility model, a sharp drop and then slow recovery in the number of passenger traffic. Baku, from the onset of the pandemic, the public transit metro was suspended and the public transit was suspended. So the Baku Transport Agency, we had a very serious task, making sure that to ensure ground transport in the context of the closure of the metro. We introduced 12 express bus lanes connecting metro stations, and they carried 600 million metro users, metro riders, but that was not enough. Buses were not enough. We added more buses, express buses, at shortest time intervals. But it turned out that express buses turned out to be quite effective. Income was another area that was hit hard. Public transit registered a drop in revenues. Prior to the pandemic, regular buses carried 12 million passengers. Then it dropped to 50%, just like in other major cities. So in the first 6 months of this year, buses carried 220 million passengers, which is only 27% of the numbers previous year. So the crisis did affect the passenger traffic and the revenues of transit companies. And of course, it jeopardized their whole business model. And in Baku, it jeopardized the whole ground transit system survivability. The company had bought new buses, and using those buses, we could introduce those express bus routes. The crisis pushed us to rethink our relations with the carriers. The question was whether we should leave this business model or rethink it. The crisis also affected the number of private vehicles. The number of private vehicles increased, and the central thoroughfares and streets, you can see that after the easing of lockdown restrictions, you see an increase in the number of personal vehicles, a 15% increase. So during the pandemic, people preferred to use their personal vehicles, which created huge traffic jams and which led to delays in bus service. The good news is that over the last 6 months, we've been seeing an increase in the public transit passenger traffic. So over the last 5 months this year, the number of passengers has increased 35%. And so we expect that people will return to the public transit. Thanks to the measures of the government and our agency, the ground public transport remained safe. Only 3% of our drivers got infected, a very solid number. Actually left a very positive impression among the general public. How to retain the efficiency of the of this industry, of the public transit industry. As Mr. Mezgani said, currently we are responding to environmental developments. We are ensuring safety conditions in our transport. But mobility is very important in the post-pandemic period. What are our plans? Naturally, buying new buses. That's still a key priority because buses are a backbone of our public transit. Buying new buses and replacing old buses with new ones will make it possible for us to overcome future challenges. Rethinking, renegotiating contracts with carriers, moving to transport service contracts. It's something new to us. They're under discussion. We are studying experience of the UITP member states. Alexander, I think we would like to discuss this issue with you as well. So it's a totally new area for us. Switching to a new model would help us to boost our financial sustainability. improve quality of service and ensure uninterrupted service delivery in emergency situations. So increasing the number of bus lanes, reorganizing bus route network, improving the transfer hubs. Another good trend, Baku is seeing more people who prefer walking. According to the polling, 57% of people, respondents, prefer to walk over long distances. So we are working with the local authorities on improving sideways, pedestrian sidewalks. Priority will be made on sustainable, clean areas and building infrastructure for e-bikes, e-push bikes. It's something new for us. Every day we see increasing demand for those services, so for walking and for cycling. So these are our plans for the future, and I think this would allow us to develop our urban mobility. Thank you for your detailed intervention. Let's get back to our studio. The Moscow Metro has become an innovative platform for the introduction of different services. Could you share with us your experience?
Thank you for your question, Alexander. Right. The most successful activities are those that improve the comfort of passengers, not those with which we can satisfy the needs, but those which ensure positive feedback from the passengers. So we organize various surveys, and one of our most important surveys is related to the satisfaction of passengers. It's made by the independent organization. Plus, we organize secret passenger surveys to find out the weakest points and to work on them. Right, let me tell you about the projects. I don't want to take too much of your time, so I would like to speak about the project Время ранних, the time of the early ones. It covered several lines of subways, so at a certain moment of time people could use metro 2 times cheaper. And the effect of that action can be compared with the launch of 5 additional trains. 8,000 passengers changed their route, and that's why we announced that we were going to change the duration of the project, because we want to have a longer survey. And the next service, which is really popular among senior citizens, that is a service where we expand the area of presence, and our workers also have special chargers for mobile phones. We believe that it's very important for passengers to stay connected. Thank you. So are we going to have gigapolis cities, or are we going to have small towns connected with public transportation? I think that it goes both ways. On the one hand, we see that the geography of a railway increases, including the Moscow Central Circle that started a larger story with the development of public transportation. I think that Moscow subway will also not lag behind. We will go in an area of development. Thank you very much. It's a very good comment. In Eurasia, there's a notion of cities that, like Krasnoyarsk, for example, that are called cities with rusted circles, because they used to have a lot of railroads, a lot of industrial facilities with railroads around them, and they all became old and rusted, and such rusty areas become driving forces for the development of the city. So in order to develop the city, you have to focus on the development of public transportation. Gulshan and Mr. Mezgani spoke about it. And now we would like to hand over to Jan. Could you please tell us about your vision of the future? And an additional question is, do you have additional requirements to lendees, and what are the requirements to receive your help? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes and no. So we definitely have new priorities to drive our investments. I already mentioned Paris alignment, but this is just a framework. And we all know that beyond this, there are huge and exciting challenges happening across transportation. We all know about the technology revolution in electric mobility and alternative fuels. So we're all aware of the potential that's out there. We're just a little less clear about how it's all going to happen in scale and in speed. And we also have what I mentioned was digital and inclusive. These are strategic priorities for the bank, and they're important elements. And they all fit within urban transport, of course. Green and inclusive is what we really aspire for in public transport. And digital is an opportunity, a tool that can make it happen much more effectively through the information systems we have, or the ticketing, or shared mobility schemes that we've discussed. And as Mohammed already mentioned, we need to make sure we don't forget the essentials, and we're very aware of this at the bank. We're discussing in a public transport forum, and the need to provide good quality, sustainable transport to all our citizens is critical to support our cities and their development towards sustainable futures. So there's two main themes. One is the sustainable mobility itself. We talked about we heard about the good results from Baku. It's very encouraging. More use of public transport, more interest in walking and active travel. And it's really about how to create viable public transport systems. And as a bank, we're very pragmatic, working with clients in understanding what are the right solutions. So in many places in Central Asia, CNG, gas fuel, is the most efficient as it is today, and we are still supporting our clients developing CNG projects where they make sense for our clients and where they fit into a sustainable mobility system. On the other component, electric transformation in transport, we're seeing this sector expand from, let's say, initial focus in buses and electric buses, and trolley buses, and moving quite quickly towards electric taxis, electric vehicle infrastructure for charging, and even what we call e-fulfillment centers, which are like e-commerce platforms. So we're focused on making buses lead the transition to electric and finding the right conditions. And as a bank at EBRD, we work closely with donors and funding support. It's very important that when EBRD provides lending, we also mobilize all additional funding that we can to make these projects make sense for clients, to make them viable. So we work with partners, both in the donor community that works with EBRD, but also with partners like the Green Climate Fund in Korea, which supports the Paris Agreement. And we also expand in the Central Asia region, Eurasia region. We're expanding the Green City Program, which is enabling cross-sector dialogue with planners and stakeholders on the kind of green investments we need to coordinate, both in terms of public transport, but also in terms of water, in terms of heating and you know, cleaning up the city and the kind of pollution that we see in places. I think it's important to mention that, you know, we see a continued sustained focus on public transport. We don't see it being diminished by COVID. We don't see it being, you know, we don't see clients shying away from the need to invest in the future. And the other important thing is we are very keen on supporting the kind of adapted solutions which build on the existing systems, the heritage systems, the trolleybus system that you have in the streets, the tram systems, the power infrastructure that is already there, and which is sometimes being underused, and which can be mobilized for the future autonomous battery technology, which can run together with these trolleybus systems. And we've already invested in that in Dushanbe. We've already invested in Balts in Moldova on these battery trolleybus systems, and we're looking at them quite actively in Almaty, in Yerevan, and seeing how we can make these systems the most effective and optimal possible. And I think one of the last points I'll mention is a policy paper we just produced on electric mobility. We were very happy to work with our partners at UITP and GIZ on this paper. And this presents the range of solutions in electric mobility and electric buses, from the trolleybus, the battery trolleybus, to the autonomous electric, which will hopefully support clients in assessing the kind of options available and the policies and choices they may need to make. So it's currently only in English, unfortunately, but we're looking into possibility of maybe a Russian version. So hopefully, if there's some interest, maybe this forum can help us to mobilize the interest to get a Russian version of that paper. It's available online, and I'm happy to share the link, or UITP is, of course, as well, to have a read of that. So I think that's fine for now, and I hope that helps describe the kind of support, funding support, and transition that we're currently engaged with at EBRD. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The electrification is a driving force for the development of cities. We know that there are correspondent plans in Moscow, and our colleagues told us that it's not only a plan. In many cities, it's a mandatory condition for development. And at the end of our session, I would like to ask you one question. What do you think about the transportation of the future in your region, like safe, resilient, for example, and comfortable? So you can use just 3 words. Mohammed and Jan, you can cover a bigger region, but could you just give me 3 adjectives to describe the public transportation of the future? Mohammed, maybe we could start with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexander. It's a question which is not easy to answer, as you can imagine. Predicting the future, you know, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And so how I see the transport of the future, I think it's a transport that will be taking more and more the expectations of people. The transport that will be accessible, better accessible for people. The transport which will be safe, of course, comfortable, resilient, because we know that it's not only about this sanitary crisis like this one, but also about natural events that could happen and that could disturb, I would say, the functioning of our cities, and we need a transport system that can resist to these natural events. Of course, a transport system which will be open to all, accessible to all. So social inclusion is very important. We cannot admit to have a transport system that will reject part of the population. No, we have to welcome them, and we have to offer them a service that is answering their expectations, and also transport system that is affordable for all. of course. That's very, very important. So as you see, it's about going back to basics. Going back to basics. It's not about inventing necessarily new technologies or having new technology. It's about really we have basic principles: social inclusion, affordability, comfort, safety, resilience. So these are basic and cleanliness, of course. These are basic needs that we need to satisfy. And I would say, to conclude, I would like to say also that we have an unprecedented opportunity to change the way mobility is organized and governed in our cities. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to reshape mobility, to reduce its impact on the environment, while making it contribute to a better economy, more inclusive and healthier society. So, and it has been possible to mobilize globally the needed resources and take the needed decisions to fight COVID. So it should be feasible to do the same for the environment, for the people, for our city. So let's seize this opportunity before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mezgani. It was more than three words. Gulshan, could you please give me like 3 words to describe the transport of the future? I will try to do it, but Mr. Mezgani described it beautifully. Of course, public transportation will drive the city mobility of Baku. We try to do our best to make public transportation fast, comfortable, attractive and safe for everyone. Thank you. Yulia, I would like to say 3 words: comfortable, environmentally friendly and safe. And I agree with the colleagues. Jan, what about you?
Sorry, I think it's me.
Yes. Could you please share some final remarks with us regarding the public transportation of the future? Could you just wrap up and say like 3 words about the characteristics of the transport in the future?
Yeah, I'm really just going to echo my colleagues. It's going to be clean. It's going to be open to all. And it's going to be a more shared economy.
Thank you. Everyone spoke about accessibility, environmental friendliness, and other attributes of the public transportation. We tried to imagine the future. I totally agree with Mr. Mezgani, who said that you shouldn't foresee the future, you should invent it with your own hands. And we truly live in amazing time when we can reorganize the transportation. We can create the cities of the future with the help of public transportation. Thank you very much, dear colleagues, for this session. Good luck. Thank you. Goodbye.